We all know as a practice owner, one of the last things you want to think about is tax planning and strategizing for your practice. In addition, the long list of tasks on your radar, it's really hard to do everything. You have to find a trustworthy team of experts that understands the unique and specific needs within veterinary medicine. My suggestion would be my friends at Granite Peak Associates. Granite Peak is an advanced tax planning and veterinary practice advisory firm who has spent many years working within vet med. Their team works year-round to make sure you're able to maximize your profitability while also minimizing your liabilities. Whether you're in the process of purchasing a practice, looking to grow your practice, or transitioning towards the sale of your practice, they are the experts to help guide you through. What makes them different than other firms is their devotion to proactive tax planning. By thinking into the future and creating long-lasting relationships with their clients, Granite Peak can help minimize the amount of taxes paid over the course of many years to come. Head over to their website, granitepeakcpa.com, to receive a personalized comparison of your practice financials against over 140 other hospitals that they've worked with. You'll be able to see how your practice ranks, where you stack up, and where the opportunities are to get better. From there, you can schedule a one-on-one call with one of the members of their team to review and analyze your results. The opportunity speaks for itself. You need someone on your side. Granite Peak Associates is that team. Take advantage of their innovative expertise within the veterinary industry. Have you ever walked into a space and thought, wow, this place is beautiful? There's a reason for that. Architecture has this innate ability to impact emotions and perceptions. My friends at Apex Design Build bring beautiful and functional spaces for veterinarians nationwide. Apex is a fourth-generation family-run company that is fully integrated from the design, architecture, and construction process. They help you mitigate risk, eliminate surprises, save time, save money, and reduce your efforts. Sounds great. Check out their amazing work and have access to their square footage calculator to help you plan out your expansion or new build. Click the link in the show notes for the exclusive offer and learn more about Apex Design Build. Discover the nation's fastest growing practice management software. Who, you might ask? It's my friends at Shepherd Veterinary Software. Founded by a practicing veterinarian, Shepherd is easy to learn and works the way you work. Shepherd automatically updates the medical records, adds services to the invoice, generates discard instructions, and so much more. It's time to bring home more stories and less stress. Learn more today at www.shepherd.vet. Finding a job or finding a veterinarian shouldn't be a waste of time. Enter an Offer First. Paul Diaz and team have created something really special with Offer First. Some of my favorite reasons are as follows. Candidates and employers will both have values aligned on the first step, not the last. The sign-up process, quick and simple, no resume required. So if you're looking for a job but you aren't really sure, it's as easy as scrolling on Zillow for a home. And finally, if you have a great match, it's based on your each unique requirements, not random keywords. If you want to learn more, listen to episode 179 with Paul Diaz. We cover all of that. The other exclusive great thing that you're going to get from this ad read and from Paul is I convinced him to give an exclusive discount to listeners of this podcast. So for owners, you're getting a 20% discount on both the placement of any candidate, but also access to the platform. Use VSP if you go to Offer First, or the easiest way is a link in the show notes. So check it out. Associates, those looking for a job, same thing. Use the link in the show notes. Use VSP if you go directly to Offer First. But I will donate and Paul will donate to a veterinary nonprofit of your choosing. So each person that signs up gets a vote. Your votes actually count, which is incredible. And so I'll be reaching out. I will handle that. But there's going to be a donation made for any associate or any job seeker that adds on the platform. We want to make sure that not only does the platform help to make sure that you find a better fit, better culture, better role, but it's also doing good in veterinary medicine. Okay, so link in the show notes is going to take you to Offer First. It's going to automatically apply that, but also use code VSP if you go to Offer First directly. And Offer First is changing the game of veterinary recruiting. I want each and every one of you to benefit from it, so check them out today. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. And first and foremost, it's, I think, officially summer, starting to have more and more folks make it tricky to book guests on the podcast or just personal things happening. So I know it's been longer than normal between episodes. And for that, apologies, right? Like my goal is always to put these out as quickly as I can, but I also don't want to make episodes just to make episodes to fill a week. And so I Sometimes I'll skip a week if I feel like there's just not anything noteworthy to say. And I had an idea that was kind of, bubbling around in my head, and I had shared it on LinkedIn. And then through a conversation, brought it up again, and it just kept hitting me. And I was like, this is a conversation that I need to have and record for the podcast. So I've talked about inflation on this show a lot. And I think sometimes the idea of inflation feels nebulous, feels difficult, but then you can associate it in real life depending on the stage you are. And the post that I had, and for those that are listening audio only, I'm going to try to explain what I'm showing, but I am going to share my screen more and more because of having YouTube and having the ability to share screen. I want to do more content so that you can actually watch it and see what I'm talking about versus just having it kind of written out or having a little bit of a, podcast outline that I go through. So let me share this because this is the post that really got me talking about it. And what I say is, remember, inflation officially has only gone up 21% since 2019, according to the government report from the Federal Reserve. And I post a link where they show that, and you can go through and verify the numbers yourself. And I think that's always important when people post statistics or information. Where's the source? What are they talking about? Where do you go through with that? Right. And then always ask, okay, is this source reputable? And just because it comes from the government does not make it reputable. But this is just factual data. This is what they report. So feel confident that that's the right number. And I put, yes, this is cherry picked, but it likely touches most Americans and indicative of a much larger trend, including home prices, healthcare, childcare, and vehicles. I mean, these are all things that I look at and understand. And I look at, childcare, home prices, vehicles, things that have impacted me and my family recently. And I've talked about inflation and why it's insidious. It destroys standard of living. And that's why I think inflation is evil. I think inflation is a tax and a theft from you and I that you never vote for, you never really grasp until you dig into the weeds. But what's shown is the McDonald's price increases from the end of 2019 through mid 2024. So medium French fries is up 134%. The McChicken is up 201%. Big Mac 87. 10-piece McNugget 68. Cheeseburger 215. Now again, I will say this is industrial sludge. You shouldn't be eating this stuff. It's terrible for you. It's going to make you extremely unhealthy. But qualifier, it's kind of the 80-20 rule. Like if this is only 20% of the time, it's probably not going to ruin your life. But if this is something that's a staple, and I have Chick-fil-A in here as well, and I know more people eat at Chick-fil-A. I've talked about seed oils. I've talked about some of the gross stuff that happens, but this is an issue. So I'm showing this as an example of lots of other things. And when you think about whether it's your team, you think about the people that are coming and seeing you, this is impactful, right? And I did an episode a long time ago, and one of the guests had shared, he said, you need to ensure that you understand when you are a veterinary clinic, you are competing for consumer spending discretionary dollars, right? That is where the money is coming from. As much as we want to make the case that, pets are part of the family. And again, I would reference the Dr. Jacob Jensen episode that I did that I think was really excellent of just ensuring that our words matter and words are important. I know it ruffled some feathers and some people didn't like it. I think it's important. And I do not think that animals and humans are the same. But again, however you want to phrase that in your own clinic and how you want to, square that is fine. But understanding that those dollars are going to be harder to come by and you are competing with other things. And food is one of them, right? Food and shelter and energy. Those are three things that everyone's going to compete with. And again, is this the best food? No. But Taco Bell, same thing, 118% increase on a burrito. The cheapest increases, right, are 19%. Spicy potato soft taco, Chick-fil-A. I mean, these are all up in the mid double digits. Deluxe chicken sandwich up 80, basically. Chicken nuggets up 96. Chicken strips up about 80. Medium waffle fries up 80. Large milkshake up 65. So that is wild when you think about it, right? And you go to the grocery store, you check out, and you're like, man, the containers are not as full, or this is costing a lot more. That is impacting your team. That is impacting everyone that comes and sees you. And so with that, I think this idea of understanding inflation, but also the U.S. consumer right now is important. If you are a veterinarian, if you are a practice owner, if you are working in a veterinary clinic, this impacts you just like everything else personally, but also professionally. And I had a conversation with a good friend, and I know he listens to the show, so shout out. And he was saying that he had the first pushback on pricing on a wellness exam recently. He had not seen that, right? Because it had been, we can raise prices, we can raise prices. We're so busy, we're so busy, we're so busy. And now you're starting to see that come back, which is why, hit with inflation and seeing this McDonald's talk about Chick-fil-A thing, and then also hitting the idea of starting to hear it from the veterinarian directly. And I think that's really, really important to understand. And so let's look at the consumer and let's have some conversations around it so you can be more prepared. Because I think what he mentioned, he's been around in veterinary medicine. He went through the great financial crisis and saw what that did. And his big conversation is there's a paradigm shift happening. And if you've come into veterinary medicine kind of 2012 onward, it's been easy to say, this is the price, this is how we're going to do it. This is, it is what it is, right? Like there's been challenges, it's not always linear and up to the right, but it's been really easy lately to say, hey, we've increased prices. People are saying yes to everything. You need to go back to the idea of being able to explain why things cost what they do. B, be able to say, here's option A, option B, option C, and being comfortable with that and not feeling like, oh, well, you take it to heart or you start discounting because that is death by a thousand cuts or doing stuff for free. And I know veterinary medicine is notorious for just, well, they can't afford it, but I need to get this information and just doing stuff for free. It's a fine line, right? And we've had conversations on the show about payment plans, being able to have a way for people to say yes, whether it is using, various different things like a care credit or others. Again, some of that, I'm going to talk about it, just the debt levels of folks is really high. So I worry a little bit about that. And I think you can have a little bit of a moral quandary there. But ultimately, what you need to do is allow people to make their own decisions. They're adults. They derive that, right? Give them options and go from there. So let's look at, there was a really good article by Truth for the Commoner, which is a podcast, and then a little article that he will write occasionally. And so there is the University of Michigan study that comes out, and it is the Index of Consumer Sentiment. And it was a significant 13% decline, and it's the lowest it's been in 6 months. That's a huge miss, right? 13% decline. And that's a big, because it goes every month. And so this is coming because of inflation, interest rates, and unemployment. You are really starting to see people getting laid off. And I had a conversation with an old client from when I was a financial advisor locally that I've gotten to know, worked at a biotech company and was laid off, right? And they now, from a family, ended up actually being a blessing for them. They have a much better job now at a better company. But I mean, that was a really, really good paying job that changed because, drug trials happened, didn't pass, and they let go of like 60% of people on this one area of the business. And that's happening in the tech sector. That's happening across the spectrum from that standpoint. And as much as I hate Northwestern Mutual and think that they're garbage, right? They had a really good study as well for retirement plans in Americans, where they did a study in April that said, most Americans estimate that they need $1.46 million to retire comfortably. That's a figure that's up 50% since COVID. 50%. Like that's a huge increase. And so what people are doing is they're projecting, hey, life is getting really expensive. What I need to actually say I can retire is much different. And so that is a big, big, big increase. Also, this is a troubling statistic where you look at the average US adult retirement savings, it's decreased by more than 10,000 and it's now about 88,400, which this is extremely sad to know that that is the average of US adults. We do not put much away. And so, this goes on to say inflation is expanding our expectations for retirement savings and putting pressure on plans and staying disciplined. I think this is also important if you work with a financial advisor, and again, coming from that world, how are your projections in the future factoring in the cost of living and that changing? Because historically, the idea has been that, the Federal Reserve, the mandate has been 2% inflation, which means I'm stealing 2% of your stuff each year, which is enough to steal, not enough to, make you go out in the streets with pitchforks and torches, right? And I say that in jest, but it's the idea of it's almost like you're going to siphon a little bit of gas out of your neighbor's tank. They're going to notice if you take half of it, but if you take a little bit every day, probably won't notice. Like, man, that's weird. Keep filling up more than normal, and that is the exact kind of idea and thought process here. So who is coming into your clinic. You have to know who you are marketing towards. And I think this is another interesting thing to bring up, where there was a piece from the Kobayashi letter. I think that's how you say it. And if I mispronounce it, that is fine. But look at this, because I think this is fascinating to show. And it is basically looking at income thresholds and consumer spending by income. And so what it says is the top 20% of incomes now account for 40% of consumer spending in the US. So depending on where you're at, if you are trying to be a high-end clinic and attract a high-end experience, you will likely be in a really good spot, because the folks that already have discretionary income are still spending and will still spend. And this is the part where you hear, like, veterinary medicine, there's so many pets that are unable to get care. And a lot of people that say, you know what, I like that model. I've worked at a practice or a clinic like that. I want to be able to offer it to the folks that I grew up with, and change things. And I think that is noble. I think we need that. It's just important to understand the trend is that if you're not already wealthy, the spending is getting cut extremely fast. The bottom 20% of consumers account for just 9% of consumer spending. If you combine the bottom 40% of incomes in the US, they account for just 22% of consumer spending, compared to 61 for the top 40. And with inflation above 3% for 37 straight months, the wealth gap has widened. And I think that's important to understand. Who are you serving? What are the psychographics of that population? What challenges are they facing? And are they kind of this already wealthy class that probably still has discretionary income? Because it talks about higher income quartiles have outpaced inflation through real estate and stock prices. If they already own assets, and I've talked about this at nauseum, right? If you already own the things that you want and you've already saved well and put money away, you have been fine through inflation, because inflation is pushing up asset prices. Real estate, stocks, bonds are, again, a place where money goes to die. But that is something where if you already own the veterinary clinic, if you already own the things that you want and have, you've probably been in a better spot. Now, if you are refinancing those, if you're buying a new clinic, if you are having a new mortgage and those interest rates are much higher, that gets tricky and that gets sticky, where there is a big need for you to ensure that those prices that you've maybe changed do stay higher. And I think this is important also to understand with the income piece, because who is your team? Is your team the top 20% of incomes, or are they the bottom 20 or the bottom 40% of incomes? I would say, there's no shame in saying that they're going to be in the bottom 40% of the incomes and they're struggling. And you need to understand, when you have pushback from a client, you want to say yes, you want to take care of them, you want to do what's right for them so that their pet gets the best care possible. But if you start cutting prices and start doing things and there's no margin, you are then going to ruin the ability for you to either pay your people more and help them out in their families. And it's going to be one of these things you have to choose. And it's either you have to maintain the line and say, these are my prices. Because let me tell you, Starbucks had a horrible quarter, stock price down a ton. Are they going to reduce the price of their drinks? Heck no. And I think an interesting piece, though, on pricing with consumers is looking at some stuff from IKEA, actually. And oddly enough, my wife and I just walked through IKEA the other day, and she joked with one of her friends, grabbed some, iced coffees, walked through IKEA. She's like, "This is the best day ever." And I was like, "Hey, I've been to IKEA like once or twice. Every time I go in there, I'm always like, oh, this is kind of fun." And you look through different things, but I'm always like, man, this place is huge. It always takes way longer than I thought. And I think we bought, literally like some bath mats. That was it. Not that we were looking to spend a bunch of money. So anyways, with that, the CEO of IKEA in March said, "This is not rocket science. We lower our prices, in particular when there are times when people have less money in their pockets. The last 6 to 8 months, we've definitely have been slower than we've ever seen." So that's interesting. Again, IKEA, discretionary consumer spending. Veterinary medicine, still discretionary consumer spending. As much as you think that these are not the same thing, it is very telling, where you need to look at how is the economic impact of different income groups. And they talk about it here, that the budget conscious consumer is no longer just low or middle income earners. By far the starkest decrease in intent to spend is coming from the higher income groups, which is interesting because it goes a little bit against the other piece that I just showed. And those that were previously the most immune to an economic downturn are tightening their belts as well, said Chad Lusk, managing director and global consulting firm Alvarez and Marshall's Consumer and Retail Group. So this is saying almost everyone is going to start pulling back on what they're spending. And it's one of those things where maybe you want to say, this is how we do things. And if you don't agree with it, we are just going to have to push back, or it's either, option A or nothing. I think you have to be a little bit more flexible and again, give options so they can choose how they want to spend, because there's going to be a bucket of money that each family is going to allocate to spending. And they may choose, for our pets, that is the thing that doesn't give. And that's fantastic. And that's great. And I think that's good for veterinary medicine, good for the care of those animals. But for others, they're going to say, you know what? It ain't it. And I know I've talked about like care credit and, credit cards and different things like that of helping people go on a payment plan. You can look at vet billing, which has been on the show. There are options out there. And one other thing from a consumer perspective, and this has been, in the news, I've talked about it before, where it is concerning, but 1 in 6 Americans from the poorest 10% of zip codes are in credit card debt delinquency. And the share of people in delinquency in these areas has increased from 11% in Q2 2021 to 17% in Q1 2024. It's the highest in 21 years. In just 10 years, this percentage has more than doubled. And for 90% of Americans, delinquency rates on credit cards are now above levels seen in the Great Financial Crisis. The US consumer feels like we are in a recession. And with that, inflation is going to be one of those things where no one wants to adjust their standard of living for a long time. Running on credit, push it off. We're going to just, tighten our belts in the future. Like it'll probably pass. Like we'll get a raise, we'll offset it. It's fine. We still want to spend. We still want to go do things. And all of a sudden, when rates don't come back down, they don't get the raise, they don't see things start to come back down in price, that inflation is what they call sticky. And that's where we're at. It is sticky. And so people are now having to adjust and say, ooh, yeah, I racked up a little bit of credit card debt. I can't necessarily pay it now. I got to, pay and chip away at it. And they're still trying to then not change their standard of living. And that's why you see debt accumulation as high as it is. And with that, I'll share this so we can kind of chat through it as well. You can look at the US, and I've talked about like the debt loads in the federal government being extremely, extremely high. Well, it's the same way in household debt, right? So it's a record 17.7 trillion. We have a record trillions, 12.4 in mortgages. Auto loans is 1.6. I've heard a lot of nasty stuff coming out of, the auto industry. It seems like in the next 12 to 18 months, if you're looking to buy a new vehicle and you're kind of forced to, and you're kind of waiting, you might get a little bit better pricing on some basic new/used cars that are sitting. Student loans is near record, and credit card debt is right at that record. So it is a higher interest rate on car loans, on mortgages, which is then adding less discretionary income, which again funnels down into how much they can pay at your clinic when you are saying this is, kind of the service level of what we're able to do. And so last thing on the credit card debt that I think is interesting, one last little chart from Joe Contasori, is it took 18 years for the US credit card debt to rise by 355 billion from 2002 to 2020. And it took 3 years to go another 355 billion. So it took, again, 18 to get it, and now it's taken 3. And Americans are piling into credit card debt because they can't outrun price inflation. Again, no one wants to adjust their standard of living. No one wants to tighten their belt. They want to say, you know what, come hell or high water, I'm going to enjoy things. I'm going to go do the things I've continued to do, even if they get more expensive. And let me tell you, anytime you go and do anything, you're like, dang, this is expensive. And we're still going to do it. But at some point, that breaks where you can no longer do it. And so you have to be cognizant of where we're at. We're at this kind of tipping level. And I think it's important, if you get pushback, if you have clients and folks that you have really good relationships, all of a sudden being like, you know what, I just can't do it anymore. Be empathetic. Don't bend to saying like, oh, you know what, no big deal. We're gonna give you a discount. All of a sudden, you can do that. But I think it is a bad habit to get into, to try to discount, because you should just price things appropriately and say, you know what, for us to run our business, that piece of equipment over there that I purchased, I got to make sure I pay for it. And it cost me X amount. Like just giving them a frame of reference of, you're not trying to extort money from them. You're trying to provide a service, put money, in the business that can be profitable so you can stay there and you can pay people a living wage so that they and their families can pay their rent, pay their car payments, pay off their credit card debt, and go through all that. And I think if you frame it that way, and if you do get pushback, people are going to be emotional. It's going to be hard. And there's going to be, I think, more pain and kind of this cycle of reckoning as far as debt levels, both from a sovereign or from a the U.S. perspective, from a government perspective, and into the individual as well. So with that, just be prepared to have hard conversations, to have more pushback. Understand how you want to train your team on having those conversations, so that it's not something where they can say, "Oh yeah, Dr. Isaiah just wants to make a ton of money and he's always wanting to raise prices." Like, you need to make sure that your team gets the understanding of what and how you talk about that, so you have a consistent approach and it comes across as a unified front. And I think ultimately that will help. So with that, enjoy the summer. I think we're going to have an awesome summer. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on. There are a lot of positives still within veterinary medicine. The one reason I wanted to record this is I went to the various different channels on veterinary news and business. I was not seeing anyone talking about the consumer and talking about spending and talking about debt and talking about inflation. And again, the show's always going to be a little bit different. It's going to take a different angle. But as owners, you need to understand where the consumer is at, because that's who you're competing with for those dollars. They have a pool of capital, and just try to make sure that you're positioning yourself and having those conversations and ready for them. Because in other spots, there's going to be people that won't be ready. So with that, enjoy it. Have a great one, and we'll talk soon and have some really good guests coming up. I've had some people have to shift things around, and we'll talk soon. All right. So there are a lot of great job postings that I want to get to. And so we're going to start off with Bayside Hospital for Animals. Great work-life balance in beautiful Fort Walton Beach, Florida. No weekends, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. No on-call or emergencies. It's an appointment only here. Currently a 2.5 doctor practice. New owner in 2021. Bringing some fresh life into the hospital. The new owner had been there for 6 years prior working, so definitely understands the team, the processes, and the community. Lots of investment in people and new equipment. ProSal is the pay structure. Far too many benefits for me to list. Email BaysideVet251@Yahoo or call 850-864-1857. Join a thriving, growing small animal practice in Vermont on the Quebec border. Full-time ideal, part-time is considered. The idea is to start with yes with the team, patients, and clients in outdoorsman or outdoor woman's paradise, while being able to practice high-quality medicine. Compensation is write your own structure within production capabilities. Literally, it is the owner wants to find the right person and is happy to negotiate, chat through, and find the right fit. If you want autonomy and a boss that enjoys teaching, reach out to Newport Veterinary Hospital. You can email newportveterinaryhospital@gmail.com. North Central Indiana, looking for an oasis in the chaos. Who isn't, right? Come join the amazing team at Fulton County Veterinary Clinic. They strive to foster a fun, fast-paced work environment while providing quality patient care. They utilize the support staff efficiently so that the doctor is available to practice medicine and do what you're trained to do in less time and paperwork, which is great. Lots of investment in new equipment and technology to support you, full-time or part-time available. Small animal and exotics are both seen there, so no ER, no on-call, no weekends, competitive salary with sign-on bonus offered, and far too many benefits to list. Go to Fulton County Veterinary Clinic. So type that in and you'll find the job posting there. Last but not least, join Watertown Animal Hospital. Personable small animal veterinarian wanted for well-established current 5-doctor mixed animal practice in northern New York, which is an outdoors person's paradise. Again, 2 of those. So if you like the outdoors, you can look at Vermont or New York. They have plenty of support staff with 6 CSRs, 6 licensed technicians, 4 animal caretakers, 2 technical assistants, a hospital assistant, a practice manager, and a bookkeeper. Focuses on mentorship and investment on the people and the technology. That's been a strategic initiative by the leadership team. No on-call, 24-hour ER less than an hour away. Salary based on experience, but no less than $95,000. Can be straight salary, pro-sal considered. Want to discuss that with the right person. Tons of benefits. Again, too much to list. Please reach out to WatertownPetCare.com for that option as well. So again, if you find a role or a job or talk to anyone and it helps you in any way, I would love to hear that feedback. So please reach out. Let me know what you're able to do. And I will continue to post these. So if you are an owner, reach out to me, let me know. And we'll go from there. And until I hit a capacity of I can't keep recording these, I want to let people know who are high quality owners around the country looking for great help. So with that, we'll talk soon. Thanks for listening to today's show. The comments made on today's show should not be taken as investment, tax, or legal advice.
All comments are for educational purposes only. You should talk to your professional team before implementing anything. If you want or need financial advice, my day job and not podcasting is helping veterinarians grow their net worth. Our team is taking new clients, and we are ready to talk to you at any stage of life. Come as you are. I always say bring the mess, right? Like if things are unorganized, that's okay. There's no prerequisites to become a client. Isaiah Douglas is a partner at Vincier Wealth Management. Isaiah is a registered investment advisor, registered with the SEC. The biggest compliment you can give me in the podcast is to share it with a friend. Reviews help the show get found, and Apple Podcast is the platform that is predominantly used for people listening to the show. If you have 3 minutes, love the show, head over to Apple Podcasts, give us an honest rating and review. It helps more people find the show. Also, the new YouTube channel is up, and I'd love to have you subscribe. Vainly, I want 100 subscribers at least. Lots more, obviously, right? But I get a vanity URL if we get to 100. That would be great. It makes it easier to find the YouTube channel as well. For all of today's links, information, head over to the veterinariansuccesspodcast.com. There you can subscribe to your favorite podcasting platform. It'll be a link to that YouTube channel I just talked about. You won't miss any other episodes, whether you listen on Spotify, whether you have some other ancillary podcast platform. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. It certainly does help. I appreciate it. Finally, if you want more information, insights, want your voice to be heard, want to share ideas for content, say, hey, Isaiah, I want you to have this guest. I want you to talk about this topic. Go over to the Facebook group. So you can search for the Veterinary Success Podcast on Facebook or head over to veterinariansuccesspodcast.com, scroll to the bottom about your host, click on the Facebook icon, and that'll get you in the group. But thank you so much for listening. It means a lot to me to be able to see the podcast grow and continue to impact people. So with that, until next time, we'll chat soon.